Hi, my name is Kate Brown, and until recently I thought I had it all figured out. Let me take you back to the beginning, before everything fell apart. Before betrayal turned my world upside down. Back when life felt predictable, even if it wasn't perfect. I started as a freelance graphic designer in my early 20s, working out of a cramped studio apartment with nothing but a secondhand laptop and an unshakable belief that hard work would pay off. And it did. Slowly but surely, clients trickled in. Word of mouth carried me further than any marketing campaign ever could. By the time I was 30, I'd built something real, a design firm that didn't just survive but thrived. But none of that would have happened without Mia Bennett, my best friend, my business partner, the person who stood by me through every late night, every missed deadline, every moment of doubt. Together, we were unstoppable, or so I believed. I remember one particular evening, years ago, when we were brainstorming ideas for a major client pitch. The office was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. We sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by sketches and sticky notes, debating color palettes like our lives depended on it. When inspiration finally struck, Mia threw her pen into the air and shouted, "We're geniuses!" Her laugh filled the room, infectious and warm. In that moment, I knew we'd conquer anything together. Moments like those became the foundation of our partnership. Celebrating big wins over cheap wine at happy hour. Supporting each other during tough times, like when Mia's mom got sick or when my marriage hit rough patches. She was more than just a colleague. She was family. But looking back now, there were signs, small cracks in the foundation I refused to see. Like the time we landed a huge account with a tech startup. I had spent weeks crafting the proposal, pouring hours into every detail. Yet, during the presentation, Mia casually referred to the project as her idea. At the time, I brushed it off. Maybe she didn't mean anything by it, or maybe I wanted to believe that too badly. Then there were the little dismissals. Once, after a long day of meetings, I mentioned how stretched thin we were getting. Too many clients, not enough manpower. "You worry too much," Mia said with a wave of her hand. "We'll figure it out later." It stung, though I didn't let it show. Deep down, I wondered if she truly valued what we'd built, or if she saw it as hers alone. Fast forward to last week. Things seemed fine on the surface. Business was booming, and our team was growing. But something about Mia felt different. More distant. Sharper. I chalked it up to stress, telling myself I was being paranoid. After all, hadn't we always navigated challenges together? That illusion shattered the day I walked into the boardroom. There was Mia, standing confidently at the head of the table, flanked by members of our executive team. They looked serious, almost solemn. My stomach tightened as I slid into an empty chair. Something wasn't right. "Kate," Mia began, her voice calm but firm, "we need to talk about the direction of the company." And then came the words that knocked the wind out of me. "The board has decided it's time for new leadership." New leadership? My mind raced. What was she talking about? Why hadn't anyone consulted me? As she continued explaining, something about restructuring and streamlining, I couldn't focus. All I could hear was the dull roar of betrayal crashing over me. When the meeting ended, I stumbled out of the room, my legs barely holding me up. Mia caught up to me in the hallway, placing a hand on my arm. "Hey," she said softly, "this isn't personal. You know I care about you." Her touch burned like ice. How could she say this wasn't personal? This was everything. Later that night, I sat alone in my office, staring at the mess of papers and files scattered across my desk. Tomorrow, they'd ask me to leave for good. Packing boxes waited ominously in the corner. With trembling hands, I opened the top drawer, searching for, I don't know what, closure? Answers. Instead, I found something far worse, an email chain. One glance at the subject line sent chills down my spine. Forged documents, Phase 2. My breath hitched as I scrolled through the messages. Conversations between Mia and one of the board members. detailing exactly how they planned to push me out. Every lie, every manipulation laid bare. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Betrayal doesn't happen in slow motion. It hits you all at once, like a punch to the gut. And as I sat there, clutching the phone like it might disappear, one thought echoed in my mind. What do I do now? The screen blurred as tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I couldn't afford to break down, not yet. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the email chain, each line confirming what I didn't want to believe. Forged documents, secret meetings, a calculated plan executed with precision. Mia hadn't just betrayed me. She dismantled everything we'd built together, piece by piece. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. The room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me. How could she do this? After all those late nights, all those sacrifices we made side by side, how could she look me in the eye and lie so effortlessly? My mind raced through memories, re-examining every interaction for signs I'd missed. That time she brushed off my concerns about overextending resources. It wasn't carelessness. It was strategy. She wanted me out of the way, silenced before I could object. And now here I was, sitting in the ruins of my own life, holding the smoking gun. Anger bubbled inside me, hot and sharp, cutting through the shock. I clenched my jaw so tightly it hurt. "You manipulative bitch!" I whispered under my breath, though no one was there to hear it. The words tasted bitter, foreign on my tongue. This wasn't me, this rage, this venom, but I didn't know who I was anymore. I grabbed a pen from the desk and scribbled notes furiously, jotting down names, dates, anything that might help me make sense of this mess. But even as I wrote, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Could there be another explanation? No, there wasn't. Every sentence in those emails screamed guilt. Mia had played me, and she'd done it masterfully. By the time I finished reading, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. I slumped forward, resting my forehead against the cool surface of the desk. My chest ached, not just from anger but from loss. Losing the company felt like losing a part of myself. This place wasn't just where I worked. It was where I lived, breathed, dreamed. Now it was gone, stolen out from under me. And then came the questions, the ones I couldn't silence no matter how hard I tried. Had anyone ever truly valued me? Or was I always expendable, easily replaced when someone more ambitious came along? The thought clawed at my insides, leaving raw wounds I wasn't ready to face. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, staring blankly at the scattered papers around me. Eventually, the sound of footsteps outside pulled me back to reality. Someone knocked softly on the doorframe, and I looked up to see my assistant, Claire, standing hesitantly in the doorway. "Hey, Kate," she said, her voice tentative. "Are you okay?" Her concern was genuine, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Instead, I forced a weak smile and nodded, hoping it would be enough to send her away. It wasn't. "I heard about the board's decision," she continued, stepping closer. "If there's anything I can do." For a split second, I considered telling her everything, sharing the emails, asking for her help. But something stopped me, a flicker of mistrust. Who else had Mia turned against me? How far did her web of lies stretch? "I'm fine, Claire," I lied, shoving the phone into my pocket. "Just packing up." She lingered for a moment longer, clearly unconvinced, but eventually nodded and left. As soon as she was gone, I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. Trusting anyone right now felt impossible. Everyone could be complicit, or worse, indifferent. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was late, past midnight. Most people would have gone home by now, but I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. Leaving meant admitting defeat, and I wasn't ready to surrender, not completely. Instead, I reached for my laptop and opened a blank document. If Mia thought she'd won, she was wrong. Dead wrong. But revenge wouldn't come easily. It would take planning, patience, and precision. And I needed to start now. As I typed out the first steps of my plan, one thing became clear: this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But how far was I willing to go to get justice? The new apartment smelled faintly of mildew, a sharp contrast to the airy loft I used to share with Mia's framed awards hanging proudly on my office wall. Now, those walls were bare except for a single calendar marking off days that felt endless. The space was cramped, with boxes still unpacked in the corner, but rent was cheap. Cheap enough that I could afford it without dipping into savings that were dwindling faster than I cared to admit. I sold my car last week, trading it for a fraction of its worth. Public transportation became my reluctant companion, forcing me to navigate crowded buses and delayed trains while clutching grocery bags like some kind of penance. Each trip reminded me how far I'd fallen. Once, I'd been able to call an Uber without thinking twice. Now I calculated every dollar as if my life depended on it. Friends stopped calling. At first, they offered sympathy. "Let us know if you need anything," they'd say. But their voices grew quieter when rumors started swirling. Mia's smear campaign worked better than I ever imagined. She painted me as unreliable, difficult to work with, maybe even unstable. People who once trusted me suddenly questioned whether I was telling the truth about what happened. Even Claire, whose concern had seemed genuine, hadn't reached out since that night in the office. But nothing cut deeper than the strain at home. My spouse, Johnny, tried to stay supportive, but frustration bled through her words more often than not. "You're obsessing over this," he snapped one evening after I stayed up late, scouring old contracts for evidence. "It's done, Kate. Let it go." His voice cracked on the last sentence, betraying the fear beneath her anger. Fear of what? Losing our stability? Our future? Or just losing control of the person I'd become? A shadow of myself, consumed by betrayal and rage? "I can't," I said quietly, staring at the stack of papers scattered across the kitchen table. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about justice." He didn't respond, just sighed heavily and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Again, sleep eluded me most nights. When exhaustion finally dragged me under, dreams turned into nightmares. Visions of Mia laughing as she shredded documents bearing my name, or standing on a stage accepting accolades while my face faded from photos behind her. I'd wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding, and stare at the ceiling until morning light seeped through the blinds. One particularly sleepless night, I found myself sitting cross-legged on the floor of the living room, surrounded by files and notes. The glow of my laptop illuminated the darkened room, casting eerie shadows against the walls. My eyes burned from hours of scrolling through financial records, emails, anything that might prove Mia's guilt beyond doubt. So far, I'd uncovered hints, hidden accounts, suspicious transactions, but nothing concrete enough to bring her down completely. Frustration bubbled inside me, hot and acidic. I slammed my fist against the carpet, letting out a low growl of defeat. Was this all for nothing? Had I wasted weeks chasing ghosts instead of rebuilding my life? And then it hit me, a realization so clear it felt like ice water rushing through my veins. Mia thought she'd won. She thought I was broken, defeated, irrelevant. But she underestimated one crucial thing. I wasn't fighting out of anger anymore. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, my integrity, my dignity. "If she thinks I'm done," I muttered aloud, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, "she's wrong. This isn't over." I grabbed a notebook and began jotting down ideas, names of people who owed me favors, former clients who still respected my work, contacts within the industry who might slip up under pressure. If Mia wanted a war, I'd give her one. But I wouldn't fight dirty. I'd fight smart, strategic, calculated. As dawn broke outside the window, painting streaks of pale orange across the sky, I realized something else. I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt alive, purposeful. But there was still one problem. I couldn't do this alone. And finding allies wouldn't be easy. especially when trust felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Who would believe me? Who would risk siding with someone everyone else had already written off? The question lingered unanswered as daylight crept further into the room, casting long shadows over the plans sprawled before me. I knew I couldn't take Mia down alone. As much as it burned to admit, I needed help. Someone who could see through her lies and dig deeper than I ever could. That's when I reached out to Sam Ridley, a private investigator whose name came recommended by an old colleague. We met at a dingy diner on the outskirts of town, far enough from prying eyes that neither of us had to worry about being seen together. Sam was everything you'd expect. Gruff, no nonsense, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He slid into the booth across from me, his leather jacket creaking as he leaned forward. "You've got 5 minutes to convince me this isn't a waste of my time," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee without looking up. I didn't waste a second. Pulling out my laptop, I showed him the email chain I'd found, the forged documents, the secret meetings, and laid out what little evidence I'd gathered so far. His expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of interest in his gaze. When I finished, he sat back, drumming his fingers against the table. "This is messy," he said finally, "but if half of what you're saying checks out, we've got something here." "We do," I replied firmly, "and I need your help to prove it." He agreed, though not without charging me an exorbitant fee that left my bank account even emptier than before. Still, I didn't care. Every dollar spent felt like another step closer to justice. Over the next few weeks, Sam worked tirelessly, uncovering details I never would have found on my own. Late-night phone calls became routine. He'd call with updates while I paced my tiny apartment, scribbling notes under dim lamplight. Together, we pieced together a damning picture of Mia's corruption. Embezzled funds funneled into offshore accounts, falsified tax returns designed to hide her illegal profits, and unethical client practices that bordered on extortion. One evening, Sam showed up unannounced at my door, a manila folder clutched in his hand. "You'll want to see this," he said, tossing it onto the kitchen counter. Inside were bank statements linking Mia directly to the embezzlement scheme. There were also emails between her and several high-profile clients, detailing how she'd manipulated contracts to squeeze every last penny out of them. It was all there, proof undeniable and irrefutable. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself a small moment of triumph. This was it, the ammunition I needed to bring her down. But as quickly as the relief came, reality set in. Evidence wasn't enough. I needed leverage. Allies. Reconnecting with old clients wasn't easy. Some had moved on, others didn't answer my calls, but a handful still remembered the work I'd done for them, the dedication, the late nights, the results. I started cautiously, reaching out with vague offers of freelance projects or consultations. Slowly, I let slip pieces of the truth, hinting at Mia's misconduct without revealing too much. One client, Sarah Klein, listened intently over coffee one afternoon. She'd always been perceptive, and when I mentioned Mia's name, her brow furrowed. "Something's off with her," she admitted. "She quoted me outrageous fees recently. I thought maybe it was just market rates going up, but she's playing dirty. I finished for her. And she's not above screwing people over to get what she wants." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "If you can prove it, count me in. I owe you one." Others followed suit. By sharing fragments of the truth, I secured not only their loyalty, but also lucrative freelance contracts that kept me financially afloat. Each agreement felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a reminder that despite everything, I still had value. With allies in place and evidence mounting, I began crafting my plan. The fake award nomination was risky, but it was perfect. Knowing Mia's insatiable greed, I knew she wouldn't resist the bait. All I had to do was make sure she walked straight into the trap. But as I finalized the details, doubt crept in. What if she saw through it? What if someone tipped her off? I shook my head, pushing the thoughts aside. Doubt was a luxury I couldn't afford now. The real question gnawed at me instead. How far was I willing to go? Because once this plan went into motion, there would be no turning back. As I closed my laptop and stared at the blank screen, the weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on my shoulders. Tomorrow I'd send the invitation, and then the waiting game would begin. Would Mia bite? Or had I underestimated her again? Only time would tell. The email was simple, elegant even, a masterpiece of manipulation. I crafted it late one night, hunched over my laptop with a cup of cold coffee beside me. The subject line read, "Nomination for Excellence in Design Leadership." It sounded official enough, didn't it? Prestigious, but not overly flashy. Just the kind of thing Mia wouldn't question too closely. "Dear Ms. Bennett," I began, typing each word with deliberate care. "We are thrilled to inform you that your firm has been selected as a finalist for the prestigious Golden Compass Award, recognizing outstanding innovation and ethical leadership in design." I paused, rereading the sentence. Ethical leadership. The irony made my lips twitch into a bitter smile. If only they knew. "There is one final step required to complete your submission," I continued. "Please provide detailed financial records from the past 3 years as part of our verification process. Failure to comply will result in disqualification." It was perfect. Greed would blind her to the absurdity of the request. Who asks for confidential financials as part of an award nomination? Someone who knows their prey better than anyone else. Before hitting send, I double-checked every detail, the fake logo, the fabricated credentials of the supposed organization sponsoring the award, even the tone of the email itself. Everything had to feel authentic, seamless. One misstep, and she'd see right through it. When I finally pressed send, my heart raced like I'd just pulled off a heist. For a moment, I let myself imagine her reaction. Opening the email, her eyes lighting up with excitement, already envisioning herself on stage accepting accolades. She wouldn't suspect a thing. Why would she? To her, I was irrelevant now. A ghost haunting the edges of her perfect new life. Avoiding Mia wasn't easy, especially when mutual acquaintances occasionally brought her up in conversation. "Have you heard about Mia's latest project?" someone might ask innocently at a networking event. Or worse, "She says she misses working with you." Every mention felt like a knife twisting in my gut, but I played along. "Oh, yeah," I'd say with forced nonchalance. Mia always did have big dreams. Then I'd change the subject or excuse myself before they could probe further. Johnny noticed the shift in my demeanor. "You seem different lately," he said one evening, watching me scroll through emails at the kitchen table. His voice was cautious, like he was testing the waters. "Different how?" I asked without looking up. "I don't know. Calmer, maybe. Like you've accepted what happened." If only he knew. Acceptance wasn't the word I'd use. Determination, perhaps. Ruthlessness, definitely. But calm? No. Inside, I was anything but. I forced a soft laugh. Maybe I'm finally letting go. He nodded, though skepticism lingered in his gaze. Good. Let him think I'd moved on. Let everyone think that. Days turned into weeks, and still, no response from Mia. Doubt crept in again, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. What if she saw through the email? What if she ignored it entirely? Each unanswered hour felt heavier than the last. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed with an alert. My stomach tightened as I opened the notification. There it was, an email from Mia's work account. Subject line, Nomination for Excellence in Design Leadership. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Her reply was short, professional, and dripping with eagerness. "Thank you for this incredible opportunity," she wrote. "Enclosed are the requested documents. Please let me know if anything further is required." Attached were files labeled neatly. Financial records 2021-2024.pdf. My breath hitched as I downloaded them, opening the first page. Account numbers, transaction histories, falsified invoices, it was all there. Every lie, every scheme laid bare in black and white. For a moment, I allowed myself to savor the victory. This was it, the evidence I needed to destroy her. But as quickly as the relief came, unease settled in its place. Submitting these records meant exposing not just Mia, but everyone involved in her web of deceit. Clients, board members, employees, all of them complicit in one way or another. And then there was the gala, the public stage where I planned to unveil everything. Would it work? Or would I be walking straight into a trap of my own making? As I saved the files to a secure drive, one thought echoed in my mind: this isn't over yet. Not by a long shot. But the real question remained: could I pull it off without losing myself in the process? The gala was everything I expected: glitz, glamour, and an air of self-congratulatory arrogance that clung to every corner of the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light across impeccably dressed guests, their laughter mingling with the soft strains of a string quartet. It was the perfect stage for what I was about to do. I arrived late, slipping into the crowd unnoticed. My name wasn't on the guest list anymore, but that didn't matter. I had already arranged my entrance through a backdoor contact, a former colleague who still owed me a favor. As I moved through the room, my pulse thrummed in my ears, each beat echoing the weight of what was at stake. This was it, the moment I'd spent weeks planning, obsessing over, rehearsing in my mind until the lines blurred between reality and fantasy. Mia stood near the center of the room, radiant in a sleek black gown, holding court with admirers hanging onto her every word. She looked untouchable, invincible even. But I knew better. Beneath that polished exterior lay a foundation built on lies, greed, and betrayal. And tonight I would tear it all down. When the host called everyone's attention to announce the award winners, I felt a surge of adrenaline rush through me. I waited until they began playing the dramatic music, the kind designed to build suspense before revealing someone's big moment. That's when I made my move. "Excuse me," I said, stepping up to the podium as if I belonged there. The host shot me a confused look, but I ignored him, turning instead to face the audience. A hush fell over the room as people realized who I was, or rather, who I used to be. Whispers rippled through the crowd like waves breaking against a shore. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Before we proceed any further, there's something you need to see." With a nod to the AV technician I'd bribed earlier, the projector screen behind me flickered to life. Emails filled with incriminating details appeared first, conversations between Mia and her accomplices discussing forged documents and hidden accounts. Then came the bank statements, line after line of fraudulent transactions. Finally, video testimonials from whistleblowers within her firm played, their faces blurred but their words damning. Gasps erupted throughout the room as the truth unfolded. Some attendees covered their mouths in shock. Others exchanged horrified glances. Through it all, I kept my eyes locked on Mia. Her expression shifted rapidly, from confusion to disbelief to outright panic. For once, she was speechless. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking as she stepped toward the stage. "This is slander. Lies." "It's not slander if it's true," I replied coolly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "You wanted recognition, Mia? Here it is. Your legacy exposed for everyone to see." Her composure cracked completely then. She lunged forward, trying to grab the microphone, but security guards intercepted her before she could reach me. "You can't do this!" she screamed, desperation coloring her tone. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Oh, I know exactly what I've done," I shot back, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "I've given you exactly what you deserve." As the weight of the evidence sank in, Mia's bravado evaporated entirely. Tears streamed down her face as she stumbled back, searching the room for allies who were no longer standing by her side. Every lie she'd spun so meticulously now unraveled in real time, leaving her naked and vulnerable under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Then came the final blow. 2 uniformed police officers entered the ballroom, making their way purposefully toward the stage. When they reached Mia, one of them spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Ms. Bennett, you're under arrest for embezzlement, tax fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes." Mia froze, her body going rigid as the gravity of the situation hit her. For a brief second, our eyes met, and I saw it, the raw, unfiltered fear etched into her features. Then she turned away, allowing the officers to lead her out of the room amidst stunned silence. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the projector as the damning evidence continued to play on loop. I stood there, gripping the edge of the podium, my chest heaving with the effort it took to stay composed. But as I scanned the room, taking in the sea of shocked faces, one thought echoed in my mind: this isn't over yet. Because while justice had been served, rebuilding my life and reclaiming myself was just beginning. The days following the gala felt surreal, like stepping out of a storm into an eerie calm. News of Mia's arrest spread faster than I could have imagined. Headlines blared her name alongside phrases like design industry scandal and fall from grace. Her business collapsed almost overnight. Clients fled, employees scrambled to distance themselves, and creditors circled like vultures as her assets were seized to cover legal fees and restitution payments. The empire she'd built on lies crumbled into dust. I didn't gloat about it, though part of me wanted to. Instead, I watched silently as people who once praised her turned their backs without hesitation. Allies became enemies. Friends evaporated like smoke in the wind. By the time felony charges were officially filed, Mia was alone. Not just professionally, but personally. Even her family stopped defending her, leaving her to face the wreckage she'd created. For me, this has brought both relief and reckoning. With Mia out of the picture, the board had no choice but to negotiate a settlement. They offered me reinstatement as CEO of the company, along with a public apology for their role in pushing me out. It wasn't charity, it was damage control. But I took it anyway. Reclaiming what was rightfully mine felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. Rebuilding wasn't easy. The trust I'd lost wouldn't return overnight, so I made transparency my priority. Weekly updates to employees, open forums for feedback, and stricter oversight measures became the new norm. Slowly but surely, the culture shifted. People began to see that this version of the company wasn't just about profit, it was about integrity. Respect followed, trickling back in small gestures, a handshake here, a thank you there. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. At home, things started to heal too. Johnny noticed the change in me almost immediately. Gone was the defeated shadow who'd haunted our apartment for weeks. In its place stood someone stronger, sure of themselves. One night, as we sat together on the couch, he reached over and took my hand. "You've changed," he said softly, his voice tinged with admiration. "Not just because of what happened, but because of how you handled it." I squeezed his hand, grateful for his support even when I hadn't deserved it. "I couldn't have done it without you," I admitted, "even when I pushed you away." He smiled, faintly, shaking his head. "You're allowed to fall apart sometimes. Just don't stay there forever." His words stayed with me long after the conversation ended, a reminder that resilience wasn't about never breaking. It was about finding the strength to rebuild. Months later, as I stood in my restored office overlooking the city skyline, I allowed myself a moment to reflect. The scars remained. Betrayal leaves marks that never fully fade, but they no longer define me. Instead, they reminded me of what I'd overcome. If you're listening to this story right now, chances are you've faced something similar. Maybe not betrayal on this scale, but pain sharp enough to cut deep all the same. You might feel broken, like the world has moved on without you. Trust me, I know how that feels. There were nights I thought I'd never get up again. Mornings where facing another day seemed impossible. But here's what I learned through all of this. Never let someone else define your worth. My identity isn't tied to the company I built or the relationships I cherished. It's rooted in who I am, flaws and all. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words, especially when the truth is on your side. And karma. Karma always finds its way. So if you're facing betrayal right now, don't give up. Justice may take time, but it's worth fighting for. Not because revenge brings happiness. It doesn't, but because reclaiming yourself does. When everything else falls away, the only thing left standing should be you. And if you can hold on to that, then no matter what happens next, you'll already be victorious. As I turned off the recorder, letting the quiet hum of the city fill the room, I knew one thing for certain. This chapter of my life was closed. Whatever came next, I was ready.